So if I wrap a bag around Officer Bader's head, therefore she can't breathe, she starts scratching at me, bag comes off, there's no marks on her, but there's scratches on me, and then you show up, who has the injuries from that incident?
You do.
I do, right? So how do you determine what happened and make sure that the correct outcome is found?
You've got two different people with two different perceptions as to what happened. And one of those persons likely did something more or worse than the other person, but they're not going to come right out and tell you that necessarily.
We always are going to have, at minimum, 2 deputies, if not more, respond based on the volatile nature of those types of calls. Once we get on scene, we're going to render it safe, and that we want to separate all the parties involved, make sure no one needs immediate medical attention, and then we're going to investigate what happened.
Going to be looking for injuries, right? Going to be looking for witnesses, any cameras, what's the home look like? How many times have you been to that scene before? What's the criminal history of both parties involved? Those are all ways you're going to make a decision as to whether or not you're arresting anyone and who that person might be. And ultimately, if we as law enforcement determine that one person was more aggressive in this particular incident, that person by law has to go to jail. Nevada law states that anyone arrested for domestic violence has to remain in custody for a minimum of 12 hours, and it's referred to as a cooling off period because obviously domestic violence calls, there's a high sense of emotion, and what you don't want is for someone who was arrested on that particular call to go to jail and get out within an hour while they're still angry, especially now after being arrested, and go and do something worse.
No, he pushed me out of the movie vehicle. My knees really hurt.
Who's really hurt?
My knee is really hurt. He pushed me out of the movie vehicle. So he was going to shoot me in the head. Where are they? Please send them.
You're coming as fast as they can. Where are you exactly?
If there isn't intervention, eventually it could lead to murder or homicide. And we've seen that. For those suspects that get arrested, we not only provide them with a letter that lets them know how serious this is and that we're going to kind of keep an eye on them, we provide a barcode that if it's scanned will send that person to a website that has 6 or 7 different links to local self-help groups. Because obviously what we're trying to do is dissuade that type of behavior.
It takes most victims 7 times before they ever contact law enforcement for assistance. And as the victim of that crime, that is, you're terrified and you want your life to go back to normal and you want to believe that person that you're in love with, that they won't do this to you again. And then it starts all over. We go back to that tension building, back to the explosion, and back to the honeymoon phase. And somewhere in the middle, we have denial.
This kind of thing has happened before. Maybe not to the scale of which this person is calling. Maybe whatever happened that particular day, that morning, was the straw that broke the camel's back. But no going there, just because this is your first call for service at this particular residence doesn't mean that this is the first time a domestic violence incident has happened.
And that's why it's so important for us to get involved and for you guys to get those good photos, those good statements, because then we go right into that honeymoon phase, and right from the jail, they're gonna be like, oh baby, I love you. And then we start seeing them go back again, because for the victim, the safest place for them to be in is in this honeymoon and then the calm phase, and they know how that works. If they decide to leave, that's when they don't know how their abuser is gonna react. When they've been served that protection order, and then when that victim cuts off contact, and they're doing the active, I'm done, I flipped that switch, I'm gone. That is when their aggressor is going to do everything in their power to keep that control.
Do we care if the witness or the victim is reluctant to testify? Why? Because what? Because the state's bringing charges against that person. We are acting on behalf of the state to protect that victim.
In all cases, on criminal cases, it's the state of Nevada versus the defendant, not the victim versus the defendant.
Can that suspect come back and be like, well, she pressed charges against me? Not necessarily. The suspect can't be like, well, since you pressed charges against me, to the victim. It's another way of us protecting that victim.
Sometimes we can't always determine a primary physical aggressor, meaning the person who initiated the physical part of the argument, the physical contact. Sometimes then we go to domestic disturbances and we don't make an arrest. If we don't make an arrest, or we do make an arrest, or we determine that it wasn't even a domestic battery or domestic disturbance, a report is always generated.
If you investigate a claim of domestic violence, you are going to write a report and you're going to call it what it is, and that is not an incident, it is an actual battery or assault. Patrol finishes their case, writes up their report. It then gets sent to the district attorney's office. The district attorney's office will get the report and they'll review it. They'll look to see, does this person have previous convictions? Ultimately, it's their decision, and they decide whether or not they're going to push the case or if they're going to do something to settle it out.
All you want to do is you want to help people and you want to get them out of the situation that they're in, but you have to know that just because I'm ready to help doesn't mean that they're ready to accept the help. Even victims who want nothing to do with the process the very first time that we are called to their home, I do find that within 2 years they will typically call. I'll get a quiet text or a quiet voicemail that just says, hey, do you remember me? I'm ready. Can I get some help?
Our job is to stop the incident initially, right? Then you have detectives, you have the DA, you have the prosecuting attorneys, who are the ones who are making sure that it gets convicted.
We at least gave them the help that they needed for that one particular incident. At least gave them, a breath of fresh air. And if it happens again, we're going to respond again, because that's what we do.
By you keeping that communication open, they might just reach out to you for the one time that's going to save their lives.
I give them my desk line, I give them my cell phone, I give them my email, and I let the victims know, if you've got any questions or concerns about anything, reach out to me, let me know, because I want them to know that there's always someone that they can talk to.
I can tell you the men and women of the Sheriff's Office with domestic violence, we're trained. We take yearly classes on this, so we know what to do and how to do it the right way from the beginning.
And we want to make sure that when they finally are ready, that we're here for them and that we're here to provide all the resources that we can to make their life better.